Hi everybody, in this example we are going to start with something fairly simple, and then we are going to build complexity on top of it to calculate process costing under both weighted average methods as well as Fifo. And as I mentioned, we are going to start very simple. So the direct labor cost for a company is $100,000. And they start and finish 50,000 units. They didn't have a beginning inventory, and they didn't have ending working process inventory either. So they start and finish 50,000 with no change in working process inventory. Now I need to calculate per unit direct labor cost for ABC company. And as I mentioned, I'm going to start fairly simple. It is literally take the 100,000 and divide it by 50,000 units that are 100% complete. It gives us $2. Now the problem is going to get more complicated as we add beginning inventory and ending inventory. So let's do that. Now I'm spending the same $100,000. This time I have a beginning inventory 10,000, and I'm starting additional 40,000 units. And I am finishing all the 50,000 units. That means there is not going to be an ending working process inventory. Now I need to calculate per unit direct labor cost for this problem. Again, the difference between this problem and the previous one is there is a beginning working process inventory. Now, in order to solve the problem, I haven't given you all the required data that we need to have to solve the problem. We need the value of the 10,000 units of beginning working process inventory. I need to know that in order to be able to calculate it under weighted average method. I need the value for weighted average. So let's assume that the value of these 10,000 units were $11,111. Under weighted average, as the name implies, I'm going to get all the costs together, the working process inventory plus that I'm adding, and then I need to divide it by the number of equivalent units that I'm finishing. In this case, I'm finishing all 50,000 units. 50,000 units, all 100% complete, is literally divided by 50,000. And I'll get $2.22 per unit of direct labor cost for this method. As I mentioned, I needed the value for weighted average method. So if I wanted to use Fifo, I need to get the percent completion. But before that, why is it not important whether I'm given the working process inventory, beginning working process inventory, whether that was 20% or 30% or 80% complete? It doesn't matter, because I need the value under weighted average method. However, I need the percent completion and not the value under Fifo method. That's important. And let's assume that the working process inventory, that these guys here were 50% complete. Now under Fifo method, what I'm doing is I'm dividing the current cost. I'm not adding the working process inventory. Under Fifo, I'm just dividing the current cost by the total number of units that I'm finishing minus what I've already finished and had at the beginning of the month. So we said 50% complete for 5,000 units. It's equivalent to 5,000 units that are 100% complete. So in a sense, I had 5,000 units that were already complete at the beginning of the month. And hence, what we are saying is, in the month, we are just completing 45,000 units. If I divide 100,000 by 45,000, I'm going to get 2.22. The 2.22 here and 2.22 here for weighted average versus Fifo doesn't need to be the same all the time, and we are going to see an example where they are not the same. I arranged the numbers, the 50% here and the value here, such that they match, but in most of the cases since they are different methods and they are looking at it from a different perspective, they don't give always the same answer. Now, we have a problem where we didn't have an ending inventory nor the beginning inventory. We have a problem where we didn't have an ending inventory but beginning inventory. Let's take a look at a problem where the same dollar is spent. We are starting 50,000 units. There is no beginning inventory, but there is some ending inventory. Okay? There are 10,000 units in work in process inventory, and I'm still trying to calculate per unit direct labor cost. First of all, what I need to know under both methods is what is the completion rate for ending inventory. And we need this percentage to be able to calculate equivalent units. Okay? So let's assume these 10,000 units were 50% complete. So in a sense, what I'm doing is with this $100,000, I'm finishing 45,000 units. 40,000 100% complete and 5,000 100% complete. I can add them up. So it's going to give me $2.22. But wait a second, is this weighted average or FIFO? The answer is both. And the reason for it is there is no beginning inventory. Since there is no beginning inventory, FIFO and weighted average will end up with the same value. And I didn't need the value of ending inventory because I can calculate it. So the value of ending inventory is 10,000 units that we have here. 2.22 is the direct labor cost for a full 100% complete unit, but they are 50% complete. Multiply them all and we are going to have $11,111. Now we've seen one example where there was no beginning, no ending inventory. One example there was no ending inventory, and one example where there was no beginning inventory. And let's take a look at the hardest case where we will have both beginning inventory and ending inventory. So in this case, we are again spending $100,000. We have 10,000 units working beginning working process inventory. We add additional 40,000 units, and then we could finish 40,000 units in July, and the rest of 10,000 units is ending working process inventory. In order to be able to solve this problem, I need a lot more information. The first question is, am I going to solve it under weighted average or FIFO? Let's start with weighted average. So we have the value of beginning inventory. We need that, and let's assume that is 12,500. And I need the percent completion of ending inventory. Why? Because at the end, I'm going to divide it by total number of units that are 100% complete. And weighted average literally averages the value of the working process as well as what we are adding. 12,500 plus 100,000. Now we are dividing it by 40,000 units that are 100% complete and 5,000 units that are 100% complete, and end up with 2.5 under weighted average method. Under FIFO, I don't need this. I don't need the 12,500. What I do need is the percent completion of these 10,000 units. Instead of the value, I need the percent completion. I again need the ending work in process inventory just like here, because I need to know what I'm finishing at total. Let's assume that 60% completion of beginning inventory and 70% completion of ending inventory, which means I'm spending this $100,000 under FIFO to 30,000 units that we start and finish from 0 to 100%, plus 7,000 units 100% complete, or 10,000 units from 0 to 70%. And then I also need to finish this 60% complete job of 10,000 units. This guy here, this 10,000 is 60% complete. I need to add an additional 40% of 10,000, which is 4,000 equivalent units. Now I have 30,000 plus 7,000 plus 4,000, 41,000 equivalent units. That will end up in 2.44 of per unit direct labor cost. Hopefully this will make sense. Please make sure you go over the examples again. I try to explain it step by step, starting with a very basic calculation, and then we made it more and more complicated as we added the beginning inventory and ending inventory and started solving it either under weighted average or FIFO.